もしやコスモでは。
Cosmo needs me free.
Cosmo AP Luxury Sports.
Like the passenger side, the driver's side rear area is rusted out a little bit as well, but nowhere near the same amount of damage. Go. That's not too bad. That's a lot better than I thought, actually. Cut here, weld, done. Easy enough. "17 centimeters by 2.1 centimeters. That fits well enough, so we'll just mark for the spot weld holes, there and about there, and then drill them out. I measured the area I cut out to make a template because when I cut the metal out, it became a little bit mangled, so I can't transfer it directly onto the new sheet metal. I'll hold this template on from the top with a welding magnet, then trace it from below. Okay, well, after this is cut out, we'll see how well this fits the round section. Template fits, so we'll cut it out in metal. Took a bit of grinding, but the patch panel fits pretty well, so now I'll just drill the spot weld holes. And as always, a quick blasting and then 3 coats of weld primer. I'm just tacking this in right now. I already screwed up the first spot weld and had to cut it out. So this time I'm being a tad bit more careful. All done with the grinding, finally. Now I'll just pound this flat. And this repair is done. While I was repairing the previous area, I noticed that there was a small rust hole on this panel here behind this bulkhead. It looks like the metal had thinned from the other side, and it had just thinned enough to form a little hole, which promptly turned into a much larger hole when I poked at it. That always seems to happen. Since accessing the area is about as easy as finding the happy place on a fat woman, I'm trying to fix it just with the welder, laying down some beads over the weak area and building it back up, instead of cutting the whole panel out, because that would require me to disassemble this entire section of the bulkhead, which just doesn't look like a lot of fun. The only disadvantage with fixing it this way with the welder is you really never know if it's going to take until you do it, and I have no idea how I'm going to be able to access it to grind it smooth. Well, I can either spend 3 hours trying to grind it through this little hole, or I can cut the area out, grind it, and then re-weld it, which would probably only take 2 hours and 55 minutes. So that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be much easier. And this is still pretty solid. Well, that's done. So now it's time to put this piece back in place. I think I can hold it in with some welding magnets before I get a tack or two on there, and then I can position it by hand afterwards by just bending the tack. Yeah, that's not bad. There we go, tacked into place. Well, the welds are cool, so guess what's next? Grinding. In a tight space like this, sometimes you have to be a little inefficient with the grinding bits. This little Dremel bit is the only one that's the perfect shape to get into this crevice. All done. I've been doing a lot of floor-related sheet metal repairs lately, so I think instead of moving on to this loveliness, I'm going to go to an area that's a little less cramped, which means that I'm going to do a little bit of easy sheet metal work, which will involve plugging some of the extra holes in the firewall. For example, these heater holes will be unneeded, as will the factory AC holes and the choke holes. I'm still going to have a heater and air conditioning. I'm just going with a vintage air unit instead. The inner diameter of these heater holes is 1 1/8 inch, exactly the same size as this whole saw. So I'll use this to make a template. That's good, because I'm the only one here right now, and it would be difficult to hold a piece of metal on the back and draw it out. I'd have to like borrow a hooker from outside or something to hold this, and using hookers as hired labor tends to get expensive. And by the way, there is literally a tornado happening out there right now. I'll just trace out the areas I need to cut using the full size of template. That's assuming the power stays on because it's gone out twice tonight so far. I'm not kidding when I said there's a tornado outside. But here I am, working in the shop, risking life and limb. And there's 2 little patch panels. .3M paint removing discs kick ass. No weld-through primer is needed on these because I can access both sides. So I'm just going to magnet these in place and tack them in. I bet the magnet's going to mess with my tacking. I don't feel like grinding right now, so I'm just going to move on to the next hole. Instead of making a paper template or any kind of measurement, I'm just going to stick some sheet metal on with welding magnets and trace it from the other side of the firewall. Well, I think you guys probably by now get what I'm doing to fill these firewall holes. So what I'm going to do is turn the camera off, fill the rest of these holes, and then turn it back on once I'm ready. And that's the last of 5 firewall patches. Guess what? Grinding! As one would expect, the welding warped the thin sheet metal a little bit, so I'm pounding it back into position before I do the final grinding. Almost there. Well, that's not bad. I'll finish it off after I grind it. Surprisingly little warpage right here, so time for grinding! These little sanding discs come in all different varieties. I usually start with a little tiny flap wheel, 80 grit, and then I go to an 80 grit sanding disc to finish it off. Good enough for a firewall. There's really no way to access this spot except using the Dremel. So I imagine this will be a lot of fun. It's actually not too bad. Well, that's good enough for a hidden section of the firewall. So the extra firewall holes I plugged were for the choke cable, stock heater lines, stock air conditioning lines, and whatever the heck this hole is. Now, as far as the air conditioning lines, I may have to cut them out again when I put in the vintage air kit, but we'll see. And thus ends episode 18. Okay, one more thing. I have a lot of sheet metal left to do. And here's the problem. Sheet metal is completely boring. It's tedious. It's the same steps over and over again. Cut, weld, grind. Cut, weld, grind. Problem is, I don't have very many interesting things to do, or at least I can't do them until the sheet metal is done. So, here's my question for you. Do you really want me to show every little bit of sheet metal repair that I do, or how about I just do a bunch of it off camera and only show the most interesting sheet metal repairs, kind of like a summary, and then we can all move on to the more interesting and fun stuff when the sheet metal is done. Let me know what you think.